Oi oi, morning all two people that are watching. Cold morning today, 22nd I think it is today, yeah, 22nd of May, really cold, got those relentless northerly and easterly winds still blowing, which have been blowing now since about, it's got to be the end of March I think. They've just been virtually every week, which has definitely affected the fishing on a lot of the lakes that I've been fishing, and that's why I've got all this gear on at the minute to try and keep myself warm. Anyway, I'm on the bank, as you might have guessed. I'll just show you now. There's my setup on a big lake. 4 rods out. 160 acres of water. Trying to catch some of the whackers that's in here. Proper angling. I hate it when people say that, proper angling. It is though, isn't it? I fish day ticket waters, I fish anywhere, I fish a stock pond, it doesn't bother me. I'll fish Salago, I'll fish Cassian, I'll fish the Orient, I've even fished Lake Ontario, which is one of the biggest lakes in the world for carp. And I just love going fishing, I do. But there's some things that I prefer more than others. And catching fish from proper lakes gives you a little bit more of a buzz, it does, to catching carp from day ticket waters and, you know, stock ponds, commercial fisheries, those kind of things. Anyway, let me change subject, and what I want to do today is talk about working in the trade as a sponsored carp angler, because I've been doing it now for, well, in some capacity for about 35 years as a sponsored carp angler. It's probably about 1990 when I first started doing it, so yeah, getting on a bit now. I was in my 20s when I started doing it. Now I'm 55 this year, and I'm fortunate. Oh, hang on a sec. Let's turn that on. I'm fortunate that it is now my full-time job. And do I enjoy it? Yes, I do. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Wouldn't want to change it for anything. And over the years, I've worked in the fishing industry. I've done lots of different jobs, ranging from owning my own bait company, which is how it all started off, which would have been late 80s when it started, with myself and Rich Taylor, who I went to school with. We started a bait company which was called Carpworld UK, and it was basically started because bait in those days was expensive, and to 2 students it was almost unaffordable, so we started making our own baits. Just got Carp Fever, a book written by Kevin Maddox, and in it there was loads of recipes in there telling you how to make carp baits, and we started making our own baits with, well, it started off with soya flour, semolina and ground down cat biscuits and dog biscuits, and then it progressed to bird seeds and then fish meals, and then once you start making baits and you start catching fish, it then started where some of the lads on the lake wanted to know what we was using, can we get it for them, so we started selling it to them. So that's how it all started for me. And then from there, it went to the next level, probably when I met Rob Hughes, when Rob, well, at the time, I was working part-time in a local tackle shop, and we started getting the bait into that tackle shop and selling it through there. But then Rob came on board when we met Rob, and Rob being the salesman that he is, because he is a very, very good salesman, he can sell, maybe not oil to the Arabs, there's only Ali Amidi that can do that, but Rob can sell most things really well, and he pushed the bait company from it being in one tackle shop into becoming in about 20 different tackle shops all around the Midlands. He'd walk into the tackle shop and, hi, you need this, like Rob does. Look into the eyes, not around the eyes, you're having 20 kilos now. You know, he's that kind of guy. It wasn't then just a case of making bait for our own use, it was making a little bit of money out of it, and that little bit of money helped us buy fishing tickets and whatever, which back in those days I was still a student, so was Rob, and it then went to the next level when we decided that we're going to try and promote it a little bit more, and we'll start writing some articles in the magazines, which was the main what can we call it, the main media for carp fishing back in the 90s. And we started writing the articles. It kind of promoted the baits that we was using, it promoted the names of the name of the company, our names, and we then got noticed by Kevin Nash, who at the time was starting Nash bait, and we weren't really making much money out of what we were doing, and the bait company wasn't really going to go anywhere either, if I'm honest, because it was more of a local thing rather than a national thing or a European thing. Whereas Kevin Nash, there's an helicopter coming over, Kevin Nash, the brand was one of the, it wasn't the biggest brand in the industry at the time. I think Rob Hutchinson was probably the biggest brand in the industry at the time. Nash was doing really well, and I think he had Jim Gibbonson as an angling consultant, and he wanted some younger guys on board, and he contacted Tim Paisley, and Tim Paisley then contacted Rob to see if we'd be interested in working with Nash bait and Nash tackle. And the two of us just looked at how much effort we was putting into the making of our own baits, and then said, God, it's a no-brainer, we're going to get free bait and free tackle from Kevin Nash. Or do we want to keep on rolling bait and making bait as we were doing at the time, because we were selling base mixes and liquids. We weren't actually selling ready-made baits. We was still rolling our own baits though, which was taking up so much time in an evening and on weekends. Kevin was going to provide us with everything that we wanted, so it was a no-brainer. Yes, we were going to do it, and not only that, Rob being Rob, the next day once we'd agreed to do it, he'd also sold the bait company. He sold it to Dave Ash, who's still going, Dave. He's still out carping. I see him regularly on the DNA pages, still catching loads of big fish. So if you're out there, Dave, nice to see you doing well, mate. And he bought the bait company off us, basically. From memory, paid a couple of grand, something like that. And don't know what happened to the bait company. Don't even know if it's still going. I have seen some Facebook pages showing me that somebody else now owns it, and they're making hook baits and stuff like that. So, you know, where did it start? It started with me and Rob and Rich Taylor in the late 80s, early 90s. So yeah, that's how that kind of thing started. And we worked for Kevin as a consultant for quite a few years. I think it was about the late 90s when we stopped working. Late 90s when we stopped working for Kevin. I think it was about 98. So we worked with him for about 7 years, something like that. Won the World Carp Cup with him, which helped him push the brand into to Europe, which did really well, because back in those days, Kevin's brand, it's fair to say, it was big in England, but it was only kind of making little footsteps into the foreign market. But when we won the World Carp Cup, it pushed it globally, and there wasn't much money in the industry in those days. It wasn't what it is today. You know, this is the difficulty of me explaining all this to you now, is because the industry today is massively different to what it was back then. So what I'm talking about now is how we started, and where it is today is I'll get to in a minute. Rob Hutchinson, who had the biggest brand in those days, it's fair to say, he was globally well known on a carp fishing perspective, and he wanted to get us on board. Rod was very close to Tim, and we had this indirect offer from Tim asking us if we'd be interested to go and work for Rod. Not only were we going to get bait and tackle free, we was also going to get paid, which to two lads in their 20s was a bit of a, yeah. You know, both of us was fresh out of university, didn't really know where we were going with our careers, and getting a little bit of money. It was actually pretty good money when we went to work for Rod. I can't remember exactly how much, but it was a few grand, you know, which is decent dough back in those days. At the same time, I'd started working at Carp-Talk as well, so I was kind of doing part-time work with Carp-Talk, a couple of days a week in the office doing the magazine, and then working for Rod as well as a carp fishing consultant. So I was getting, you know, a livable amount of money, which was, in those days, when you're straight out of university, doors started opening for us to potentially make a career out of working in my hobby, doing my hobby, which was what I was interested in. It was like, wow, yeah, I'd love to do something like that, because I didn't really know where I was going with my career. I'd done lots of different jobs before I started working in the fishing industry. I'd been, I'd even worked on the road gang when I left school. Also worked in a sports centre for a few years, which I really enjoyed, and also worked on a farm. So, you know, I didn't know where I wanted to go. I didn't know what I was going to do in my life. So, you know, to potentially earn a little bit of money out of being involved in my hobby, was just like, wow, yeah, I fancy a bit of that. And I've never been motivated by money. I've been more motivated by having a nice life, you know, doing things that I enjoy doing rather than doing things that I don't want to do. You know, I remember being at school and just not interested at all in anything that the teacher said to me apart from sports, games. That's all I was interested in, is going, oh, I like playing football, I like playing cricket, I like playing sport. And, you know, I was an outdoor guy. That's how I've always been. I've never been an indoor bloke. Although I've been to university since, if you'd have asked me when I was at school, will you end up going to university, I'd have said no. But I did. But I ended up going to university because when I left school, there was no opportunities to go to university to do the subjects that I had an interest in. I ended up going to university doing fisheries. But I was a mature student. I went in my 20s when I went to university. I've diverted off the subject because that's the beauty about what I'm talking about is now, is it's just freestyle. I'm just talking, just waffling and talking to you about getting in the fishing industry. So yeah, I got the consultancy from Nash, and then it progressed to the paid consultancy from Rod. I stayed with Rod for about 7 years, and then unfortunately Rod's company went bust, which was, you know, really sad. And I ended up then joining forces with Briggsy and Rob Hughes, setting up our own company, which was called Venture, which ran for a couple of years. We teamed up with Solar Tackle, with bait. It did really well to start with, but none of us could apply the time into that company to make it go anywhere because we was too busy fishing all the time. So we ended up selling it to Sam Anderson of Eric's Angling Centre. He bought it off us, and at the same time the industry had changed a lot, and Nash approached us to see if we'd be interested in going back to that company as a paid angling consultant, which both myself and Steve Briggs did. And I stayed there right the way through till 2018 when Carp-Talk ended, and that brings me up to where I am today. I think some of the first full-time carp fishing consultants started around about 2010. 2011, something like that, and you know, I was still a part-time one then because most of my career was involved with the magazines, which had gone from being a part-time angling consultant when I left university to working at Carp-Talk to then becoming the editor of Carpworld magazine. So I ended up forging a career within the magazine industry, but it was all fishing related, it was all carp fishing related, and that was part-time my work, and the other part-time was my angling consultancy work, which mainly involved, you know, promoting the brands, and that's what the job involves now. It's about promoting the brands. But going fast forwarding it to where we are now, to 2018 when I started doing it as a full-time job. The reason why it ended up becoming a full-time job for me is, and I think I speak for a lot of the guys that work in the industry now as well, the guys that do this job, of which there are probably, I don't know, a dozen guys, maybe a few more than that, that's in the fortunate position to be called a full-time carp angling consultant. These guys have got that job not overnight. It's not something that's come overnight to me. It's not something that's come overnight to anybody. It's something that comes through a progression. And if you're wanting to do this job, you're never going to get somebody knock on your door and say you've been chosen to be the next carp fishing consultant. It is something that the companies notice that you are going to be an asset to their brand. And when I say asset, I'll explain this to you now, in that I've got this job, I think, primarily because I'm an absolutely passionate carp angler, passionate beyond belief, whereby it becomes my only focus of conversation virtually every single day. I don't fit in with normal society, and I know I speak for a lot of the guys that do the job that I do. I don't want to be a part of the normal society. I want to be out here fishing, and I've always been like that. I've always been an outdoor guy. I've always felt better out here in the wild than I have in the middle of a city. And I remember Rod saying this to me years ago, Rob Hutchinson. He whenever he had people around him, he hated it. He felt uncomfortable. If you ever saw him at a show, he didn't fit in. He used to get sweaty, he used to get anxiety, and he didn't like it. He liked being out here in the wild, just fishing. And that's pretty much what most of the guys, I speak for most of the guys in the industry, are like. They're passionate carp anglers, they're passionate about fishing. And when I started being involved when I first started carp fishing, let's say, or angling, there was no thought of it ever being my job. There was no thought of it ever being a part of my job. I just loved it because I loved it. I loved being out here. You know, you find, if you watch Muhammad Ali as an example, I remember seeing, and there's quotes of his now that go around on social media where he's turning around and saying that find your place in life, find what works for you, where you fit in. And I've always had this connection with angling. I've always had this love of being out here and fishing. And some people find it boring. A lot of my family say, when are you going to get a proper job? When are you going to just forget fishing, you know, just let's go and do normal things in life. And I'm like, well, I don't want to, I want to go fishing. You know, look at Briggsy as an example. Briggsy's just fishing. He does that job because he's a complete fishing machine. He just goes fishing all the time. He just finishes one trip and starts another trip. It's his passion. It's him. It's part of him. It's who he is. And that's why he is Steve Briggs. Some people have that connection and some people don't. You know, I see this on social media a lot when I see people putting up on their statuses as, you know, their occupation, carp angling consultant at whatever company. People might laugh at them and stuff, but that's probably where they feel safest. That's where they feel, that's their position, that's where they like, you know. I don't ever knock anybody that wants to work in the fishing industry, that has some ambition about themselves. You know, that's how things start for people. I can remember when I first made my first steps into the industry, and, you know, social media didn't exist in them days, but you get those people slagging you off and knocking you and things, and that is the negative side of doing the job that I've got. But there's a lot of positives to doing this job as well, and the positives are being out here today. You know, I'm out here for 5 days this week. I'm out fishing in the wilderness, and I'm loving it. Absolutely love it. Wherever I go, I just love going fishing, and that's the main positive to someone like me. And I think all the guys in the industry will say the same that do this job, is that they're just out fishing because they love being out here, and it's their happy place, it's their place. Now, I've got a family, I've got kids, I've got a wife, I've got step-kids as well, and obviously you have to maintain a balance if you want to keep that kind of thing going on in your life. I think if I did fish 24/7, 365, then would I burn myself out? No, I don't think I would, because this is my place. This is where I'm meant to be, is on the bank fishing. But it's nice having that balance as well. It's nice having a wife in my life. It's nice having kids in my life. It's nice having some kind of normality as well. But everybody's different. And I always think if you want to be heavyweight champion in the world, you're not going to get to being Alexander Usyk or Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson just by getting up in the morning and getting out of bed. You've got to put something into it. You've got to do the road work, you've got to do the training. Same with being a snooker player like Ronnie O'Sullivan, you've got to go and pot the balls. And someone like a Terry Earn, he's out there fishing. You know, he's out there putting the effort in. He's out there grafting, blanking, waiting, putting the time in, getting to know the lakes. That's how you become a Terry Earn. That's how you become a Steve Briggs. It doesn't come overnight. It doesn't come from one type of fishery like a commercial lake. It comes from fishing lots of different lakes. It comes from fishing low stock waters, from fishing high stock commercial lakes. It's been willing to go out there and, God, just in a lovely woodpecker. Gosh, lovely that is. Absolutely stunning. You know, fishing different waters and being a representative for carp fishing, and that's what these brands are looking for, is people that's like that, that's also pretty decent anglers as well, but also a decent representative of their brand. You know, there's an awful lot of guys in the industry that's caught a lot of good fish, But outside of the industry, there's a lot of people who've also caught a lot of fish, but they're not in the industry, maybe because they choose not to be. But I can think of some that's not in the industry because they've not stayed away from controversy. You know, some people that can't help themselves. You've got to try and remain professional. You've got to try and remain, what's the word I'm looking for? Just remain a good representative to the brands. Now, your job within carp fishing isn't just catching fish as well. That's what I've got to say. Of course, it involves a little bit of that. You've got to be testing the products. You've got to be out there fishing, putting the time in. Need to go to shows. Need to go to meetings at Avid sometimes and DNA, and chat with those guys. And only today I've been doing a bit of stuff over the phone, doing discussions about some new things that are coming out within the Avid brand, testing new products, giving your opinions on things, being outside testing these products, making sure that they're right. You know, we've got, I can't say what it is, but we've got something coming out the next few months which needs some thorough field testing, and it needs testing properly on raw lakes like this, you know, wild lakes out in the open, in the elements. Basically, an item needs thoroughly testing, so you know that's part of something that I can offer when you're doing this job. So you know, being a sponsored angler there's lots of things that's involved in it. As the industry's evolved, I've had to teach myself different roles. Back in the day when I first was an angling consultant, it was mostly about writing articles in the magazines, and now it's become more social media based, more video based as well. I've had to learn how to use video platforms like YouTube. I've had to learn how to put a film together, to type articles at short notice. Only the other day I got a message off Jake Addison, who's the editor of Total Carp. Can you sort me out a feature of 3,000 words in the next 2 days because somebody's let me down at the last minute? And I did it. You know, that's the kind of thing you've got to be able to do. And so if you're a young lad watching this, and I know it's going off all over the place, this topic, I'm just talking to a camera. I've already done half an hour just talking, waffling. I don't even know where it's going. But if you're a young lad wanting to come into the industry, what I'd say to you is have the passion for carp fishing in the first place. That's the most important thing. Secondly, you know, be willing to put yourself out with your fishing, catching some fish from lots of different waters, not just the same waters, not just the commercial lakes. You know, it isn't what social media would sometimes make you believe, which is just this relentless uploading of fish. You know, Terry Hearn doesn't upload fish every single day. He might catch one carp a year, but when he catches that one carp, it's a special carp. And the industry works with, there's recognition within the industry, I think, and that is that some lakes have more kudos than others, some carp have more kudos than others. And if you can go down the route of uploading pictures every single day if you wanted to, but those kind of anglers won't get the same. They might become famous and more well known because they're uploading pictures regularly, but they won't have the same kudos as a Terry Hearn who's catching one special one a year. Do you know what I mean? And he's done that now for 30 years, Terry has. He started out in the industry the same time as I did, and he was, you know, doing exactly the same then as he is now. He's catching one carp a year, but it's one of those carp that you see and you just go, God, what a fish! Do you know what I mean? But there's these guys now that's coming in the industry who are uploading pictures every single day because all they're doing is fishing, you know, the more commercial lakes, the more easy lakes where the carp are a little bit more easy to catch. I can't tell you which route to go down. I've tried to strike a balance of doing a bit of everything, a bit of the commercial fisheries, a bit of the harder lakes, a bit of the overseas fishing as well. You know, that's the route that I try and go down. Is if you're working for a brand, then I can communicate with and relate, I should say, with all levels of the fishing industry, and the guys that's fishing the commercial lakes, the guys that's fishing the overseas lakes, the guys that's fishing the big wild lakes. You know, I try and be able to represent all levels of the fishing industry. So maybe that's something for you to consider. Now, options for you as well is now going down the route of media studies at university or college, these kind of things, they'll definitely help you learn how to use cameras and learn how to use social media, learn how to use these platforms that are now becoming more popular every day as they become bigger and bigger and more used in our lives. And you know, it's an important part of it, definitely. And how big are these jobs? How readily available are these jobs? Well, you're not going to walk into them straight away. It's not something you're going to get straight away, because as good as some young carp anglers are, and I always think back at myself, have I changed much as a carp angler as I've got older? Not really, because my enthusiasm is still the same, but my knowledge upstairs, my experience is massively different to what it was when I first started. I've got a massive amount of information in my head now, and that information has been gathered from fishing hundreds and hundreds of different waters, experiencing hundreds and hundreds of different types of environment, different types of carp, different types of situations. And that's, to me, that's a powerful tool. Do you know what I mean? It's a powerful thing to have, and it's worth something, I think. So the point I'm getting at is, a lot of the guys that's in the trade doing the jobs that I've got, they're all pretty much the same. They're addicted to carp fishing. They're very experienced carp anglers. They're capable of talking in front of crowds on stage about fishing. They're capable of writing articles. They're capable of doing lots of different things, you know. So some of these guys that say it's dead easy to be an angling consultant, all you do is fish 24/7, 365 hours, that's nonsense, absolute nonsense. It really is. You could be a complete time bandit and catch loads of carp, but of no use whatsoever to a company, because you've got to be able to represent the brand, and you've got to be able to represent the brand in the right way, because these brands are not going to give you free gear for nothing. These brands are going to look for guys who are of benefit to them. I ran the Young Carp Championships for 13 years at Linear Fisheries, and at the time Ali Meady was Corda's main marketing man, and he used to come down to the Young Carp Championships every year, and you could see him when you stood there at the back as an adult and you saw what he used to do. We used to call it grooming. We used to call it, sorry Al, but we used to call it Ali's grooming again, because he would go round and he'd chat to the kids, and he'd be working out which guys were good in front of a camera, which guys were a good all-round package. Regardless of where they came in the championships, they could have come last. He'd snap him up. That's where I'm going with it. If you've got the all-round package, then you can certainly open doors for yourself. And Ali in himself, it's fair to say, he opened an awful lot of doors for himself, because he came into the industry quite late. He went to university, worked for a marketing company, and he's only been in the industry now probably just over 20 years. But I can remember when he first started, and he opened doors for himself. He knew where he wanted to be, and he made it happen. So when you hear people knocking Ali for whatever reason, probably through jealousy more than anything else, he has worked absolutely so hard to get where he is, and he deserves every success that he's now getting, because he's opened those doors, he's worked, he's took the flack right at the start when he first came into the industry. And that's what happens. As a young kid, you're coming into the industry, you're going to get an awful lot of flack from the adults, the elder guys, because that's how carp anglers are. You know, anybody who's coming into, who's this guy, what's he know about it? You know, sometimes I see these young guys put straight in front of the cameras, and you know, they're going to get knocked straight away from the guys who's been around carp fishing for a long time, because that's just how some guys are, for whatever reason. When I first came into the industry, there wasn't the media available today, but in the magazines, when I first started writing the magazines, myself and Rob Hughes had exactly the same thing. You know, people slagging us off. Who are these young kids? What do they know about anything? They ain't caught any big carp. They're a pair of noddies. That's what happens. But don't let it put you off, young'uns. If you're watching this, don't let it put you off, because if you're absolutely adamant that that's what you want to do as a career, then go for it. Because I feel, looking back at 35 years that I've been involved in this particular job, I haven't worked a day. If you know what I mean. I remember doing jobs that I hated, and I hated going to work. And you've only got one life. Make life be enjoyable. And I'm not motivated by money. Never have been. I'm more motivated by enjoyment, having a good time, having a good life. And if I died today, I've had a great life. I ain't earned a great deal of money because this particular job doesn't earn you a great deal of money. It's not like a Cliff Fox earning money out the trade, a Danny Fairbrass earning money out the trade, or a Kevin Nash. It's, if you're an angling consultant, then it's fair to say you're pretty low down the ladder. It really is. It's fair to say that, but I don't care about it. You are pretty low down the ladder, even though people like Terry are idolised by the carp angling community, and they're looked up to by the carp angling community, and rightly so, because Tell's, he's the main man, isn't he? In England especially, he's caught loads of good fish. Maybe not so much to you younglings that's watching this now. You probably look up to Tom Dove, who again, fantastic angler, fantastic guy, and rightly so, he deserves credit. But I don't know what these guys earn, but I can guarantee you that someone like a Tom Dove ain't earning what a Danny Fairbrass is earning. That's the point I'm getting at, is if you're an angling consultant, then every year when it comes around to you discussing your contract, if that's what you've got, every year comes around, well, we haven't got the money, the budget's low down, we've not made as much money. You might get a bit of free gear and free bait, and you're getting paid for it, but you're not going to get paid an awful lot. You're not talking about mega earnings. So if you're driven by money and motivated by money, then maybe you should be opening your own brand rather than being a tackle consultant like I am. I don't do it for the money. I do it because I'm absolutely passionate about carp fishing, and I know I speak for a lot of the guys in the trade who do the same job. You do it because you love it, and every day you're out here doing stuff like this, which is just wonderful. Anyway, I've been waffling on now for 39 minutes. If you want to do this kind of job, then if you've got that passion, that motivation, you can make it happen. You definitely can. Even now in an industry where it's very busy, there's a lot of people trying to compete for different roles, you can still find ways of doing it if you are meant to be. Be passionate about carp fishing first and foremost. Catch some carp. Be media savvy. Be very motivated. Be very willing as well. That's something I've not discussed here, is I do an awful lot of things for free still now. I go to a lot of charity events. I go to a lot of junior events helping out. I edit Carp Fisher is another example for the Carp Society, which I get nothing for. I do it all free, which takes up probably a week of my time every year. Probably 2 weeks of my time, I should say, every year. It's volunteering, basically. That's what the point I'm getting at is. Go to work parties, get to know fisheries, get yourself networked, get to be part of different lakes, get tickets for different waters. Network, it's a big part of it. Volunteering helps you network. That's where I'm going with that. So there's lots of things you can do to make it happen for yourself. Anyway, another 5 minutes on from when I last said I was waffling. 45 minutes in. Hope that's given you a little bit of an insight into life as a full-time angling consultant and how you get there and what it's like, and some of the things that no doubt some of you guys probably talk about and wonder. And yeah, I shall see you again for the next vlog very soon. Not sure what the topic will be then. Probably somewhat completely different though. And hopefully I might have caught something. There you go, there's the lake behind us. Let's finish with that. See you soon, guys. Hope you're catching a few.